Hello. Oh, missing the chat. There we are. How is everybody? How are we feeling? Imola is upon us. As I said, I feel like I'm a little bit out of the loop of Formula One. I mentioned it yesterday, been away, but now fully back into it. Obviously, back-to-back Grand Prix weekends for the first time this season as well, getting us thrown into the fray of Formula One. Monaco coming up, but Imola first and foremost, and a couple of bits and pieces to talk about after yesterday's qualifying. Did I see Seb's laps? I did indeed. It was heartfelt, wasn't it? It was very warming to see Sebastian Vettel in that McLaren give his opinion, obviously, on Ayrton Senna. See that car going around this track. Like, it does have a lot of meaning behind it and a lot of, goosebumps. I feel like, is a very good way of putting it in the chat. How are we all doing then? Boopy boop in the chat. Twin Charger 50 is here. I am. I'm always here. Yash, hello, mate. Josh in the chat. Antonio in the chat. Sally in the chat. Some proper OGs there. James was first, though, and he wants you to know that. He wants you to know he was first. London is red. I'm surprised you're here, mate. Surprised you're here. Big, big day for you. Obviously, outside of Formula One in football. This afternoon, I will be watching Arsenal and Manchester City, kind of keeping an eye on it. Obviously, Liverpool dropped out of the title challenge. We were never really, well, we were in it, but we were never really of the caliber of team that Arsenal and Manchester City have been this year. Like, if Liverpool would have won the title, it would have been a bit of a fluke. Whereas Manchester City, Arsenal have both been exceptional this year. But we're not here to talk about football. We're here to talk about Formula One, at least for the next couple of hours. I think today, Piastri will be showtime. Interesting that you pick up on Piastri. Let's look at the qualifying from yesterday. You'll notice one driver is slightly out of position compared to where you expected him to be. Max Verstappen starts on pole position. Lando Norris second place behind him. And that is because Oscar Piastri picked up a 3-place penalty. So it was during qualifying 1. Oscar Piastri was making his way around, and Kevin Magnussen in the Haas was coming around behind him. Kevin Magnussen was on a fast lap. Piastri was on a slow lap. And unfortunately for Piastri, like, he didn't really see Kevin Magnussen coming. Kevin Magnussen even said afterwards, like, it was just unfortunate that it was at that point of the track. For me, Oscar Piastri is not really to blame there. That's got to be the team on the radio letting Oscar know, like, Kevin is coming up behind you. Kevin is 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 2 seconds away from you, so that Piastri knows where he's going to be. But yeah, Piastri picking up a 3-place penalty for getting in the way of Kevin Magnussen's fast lap. And obviously, Kevin Magnussen starting 18th place. He was very, very frustrated, thought that the Haas car had a lot more pace. And you can see Nico Hülkenberg starting in 10th place kind of shows you where that Haas really should have been in qualifying yesterday. So interesting to see what Piastri can do from there, because it's a very different challenge starting from second place and trying to hold on to the back of Max Verstappen to now trying to get past both of those Ferrari cars. That's going to be a tough ask from Oscar Piastri, if I'm honest with you. I know that the McLaren is upgraded. I know the McLaren does have pace this weekend, but Ferrari also upgraded. Ferrari also looked quick. It was very, very tight between those top 5 in qualifying. Like, I genuinely thought it was going to go right to the wire. Both Piastri and Norris within a 10th of a second of Max Verstappen in qualifying yesterday. Just goes to show, like, where their pace is. Ferrari kind of went off the boil a little bit. Carlos Sainz couldn't quite get to grips with the soft compound tyre. Obviously, he's not really going to have to use the soft compound tyre today. So Sainz is going to be back to his best on the hard, on the medium, showing the pace that he's got in that Ferrari car. Piastri and Sainz also next to each other as one to keep an eye on after everything that went on in Miami. And Charles Leclerc is kind of looking a little bit better in the car. Very mixed start to the season in terms of Charles Leclerc's performances, in my opinion. Hasn't quite fully clicked with this Ferrari car yet, but did look to make a little bit of a step forward thanks to the upgrades, and looks like he could be right in and amongst it again, in for the podium places, possibly even the victory, because Max Verstappen's had a very weird weekend in that Red Bull, has to be said. And obviously, when it comes to the Red Bull, he's just not very happy with it. It's a bit of a weird one. Like, he's still putting in performances. He's still winning Grand Prix. He's still at the top of the championship. He's still putting it on pole position. But he just doesn't feel very happy with the balance of the car a lot of the time. And he was absolutely slating the team on Friday during free practice 1, free practice 2. They managed to just about fix it. And he even said after qualifying yesterday, he wasn't expecting to be right at the top. He was expecting that maybe he might qualify outside of pole position for the first time in a long time, of course. He has got that record now of the most starts in a row from pole position, which is absolutely insane. But Max Verstappen therefore starts at that point. Let's have a little look at your guys' ideas and thoughts and feelings to those top 5 places then. Or Piastri, but Lando P2. Let's go. Very true, yeah. Opens up Lando Norris to be right behind Max Verstappen. So definitely one of those ones where you could see maybe a little move down in towards turn 1, turn 2 from Lando Norris. Like the first big kind of braking zone, obviously down towards turn 2 through turn 3. If he can just keep himself up alongside Max Verstappen going into turn 2, puts himself in a nice little situation, does Lando Norris. Same with Charles Leclerc, to be honest with you. We've seen Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz both be quick off the line over the course of the season so far. Sorry, mate, that Norwich didn't get promoted. I mean, we never deserved it. Never, ever deserved it. Norwich were so bad this season. The fact that we were in the playoffs at all was a bit ridiculous. So, yeah, that was never, ever going to happen. Piastri has to fight Sainz again. Exactly. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting little battle to think about, isn't it? Do you think Red Bull has a faster car at the moment, or is just Max so much better? It's a combination, right? You have to. It's always a combination. As much as I do think Red Bull still has the best package on the grid. Don't get me wrong. I don't think they've gone from winning, what was it, 21 races last season out of 22 to now dropping all the way to like gaining and being in the mix of everybody else. But I feel like they maybe have plateaued a little bit. You know, you can find lap time and you can find pace in a Formula One car up to a point, right? There is always going to be an optimal, and once you get there, it's very hard to find any more progression. Whereas I feel like a lot of the teams, McLaren, Mercedes, Ferrari, they were so far adrift of Red Bull that the fact that they're even just closing in on Red Bull really does make it look like they're improving dramatically. And like, it's the problem with Red Bull. Like, as much as they improve, they can never like do what they did last season. They can never match what they did last season. So it's just like anything that they do, even if they go on to win all the rest of the races this year, they still won't match, obviously, the win percentage that they had last season in terms of a team. So it's always a bit of a weird one for Red Bull. Perez pulls a Bahrain. Starting in 11th place, Sergio Perez. Should we run down the rest of the grid? Because I've got a few questions about other bits and pieces. Russell starts in 6th place. He will rue the fact that he was 1,000th of a second off Carlos Sainz in qualifying. Had he started in 5th place instead of 6th place, he would have also gained on Oscar Piastri and would be now in 4th where Carlos Sainz is. So very, very close, very, very small margins between Ferrari of Carlos Sainz and George Russell yesterday. But it does feel like the Mercedes car is kind of where it is. I would be very, very surprised if George Russell and Lewis Hamilton finish any higher than 6th and 7th place. I mean, Sergio Perez is also coming through the field, so we could end up seeing Hamilton and Russell ending up kind of 7th and 8th place. But I do just think that's where the Mercedes car is at this point in the season, and the pace that they have got. Obviously, Yuki Tsunoda starting in the mix there in 7th place, in between the two Mercedes, with Daniel Ricciardo in 9th place as well. So RB really kind of starting to stamp a little bit of authority on that 6th place in the constructors' standings. And Yuki Tsunoda continuing his very, very good start to the season. Daniel Ricciardo looks reimagined. Again, had a really good weekend in Miami. We didn't get to see what kind of pace he would have in China. But since that upgrade has come to Daniel Ricciardo's car, looks a lot more settled inside of that RB. And maybe this is, Daniel Ricciardo really started to kick on at this point in the season. I mean, both Tsunoda and Ricciardo out-qualifying the full Red Bull car of Sergio Perez. Although Sergio Perez did make a little mistake in Q2. So whether that would have been the case had he not made that mistake. But again, you make the mistake, that's how it ends up, right? You end up dropping out of Q2, you start in 11th place. Nico Hülkenberg starts in 10th place. Again, just a ridiculous start to the season for Nico Hülkenberg, and that Haas looks so comfortable. And the fact that Sauber have been able to get him involved for 2025 and onwards, obviously, as they transition into Audi, looks more and more like a really solid pickup for that team, doesn't it? Just every single time Hülkenberg gets in the car at the moment, he just looks so quick. And he's obviously got the opportunity to pick up even more points for Haas this season, kind of consolidate 7th place in the constructor standings for Haas. That's what RB and Haas really need to do. They just need to continue to separate themselves out from Sauber, Williams, and Alpine, because those three teams are going to improve. Like, we're seeing a lot of improvement from Alpine already. Talking of Sergio Perez starting 11th, Esteban Ocon is starting in 12th, and Pierre Gasly also had a really solid Q1 yesterday. So we are starting to see Alpine improve, Williams improve, Sauber improve in inverted commas. So it does feel like RB needs to get the points in now. Hülkenberg and Haas need to get the points in now, because you never know what's going to happen towards the end of the season. And of course, there could be just one crazy race where 15 drivers DNF and suddenly Esteban Ocon's got himself a podium. And like RB and Haas need to keep themselves out of that range effectively. Make sure even if that does happen, they still stick in the constructors standings. Then just behind that, we've got Lance Stroll in 13th place. The Aston Martin looks absolutely nowhere. I know over the last few weekends, I've been talking about, the fact that Aston Martin should probably be a lot closer to Mercedes in the standings, had it not been for Lance Stroll throwing away quite a few opportunities this year. But that Aston Martin just looks nowhere here in Imola. And Lance Stroll, the higher placed Aston Martin in 13th. Alex Albon 14th. Again, Williams with their own struggles. Still massively overweight Williams at the moment. So whether or not Albon will be able to do anything from there, I'm not too sure. Gasly was quite disappointed. Q2 didn't quite go the way he wanted to. Starts in 15th place. We then have Bottas and Joe starting behind him in 16th and 17th. Magnussen, as I mentioned before, in 18th place after dropping out of Q1 due to that incident with Oscar Piastri. Logan Sargent and Fernando Alonso at the back of the pack. Fernando Alonso, a couple of people have asked, why is Fernando Alonso in 20th rather than 19th? Because obviously Logan Sargent didn't manage to set a lap time in qualifying yesterday. All of his lap times deleted. Fernando Alonso is starting from the pit lane. So basically Aston Martin deciding to, well, they were going to start 19th or 20th. They've decided, let's just start 19th. Let's just start 20th. Let's start from the pit lane, have the opportunity to fix the car, because they had quite a little bit of damage to the underside of that Aston Martin, thanks to Fernando Alonso going through the gravel during qualifying. And also, they were able to tweak a few bits and pieces and change the setup a little bit more. And if you want to do that, you have to start from the pit lane. So Fernando Alonso starting from the pit lane, what he'll be able to do from there. As I said, the Aston Martin just looks nowhere near where it usually is. And Fernando Alonso looks very uncomfortable in that Aston Martin. So I'm not too sure what he's going to be able to do from the pit lane, but it'd be interesting to see how far up he can really make it. Let's have a little look. I remember you being at 1K subs. Yeah. Everyone's been, it's been a crazy start to the 2024 season. I remember being on like 20K subs literally 4 months ago. So it's been a rocket ship in terms of the start of this season. So yeah, thank you guys so much for all of your support recently. Do I think I'll reach 100K subs by the end of the season? I don't try and set those kind of metrics for myself. I feel like subscribers, views, that kind of thing, like all I can do is make the best content and the content that I want to make. And if people like it, then they do. If people don't like it, then they don't. Like, I never really set myself subscriber targets or view targets anymore, because I just feel like I don't really have any control over that, if you know what I mean. Like, I can't make people hit the subscribe button. All I can do is make content that I'm happy with. What's the like goal for today? That is an interesting one. Literally, as I've just said, can't really control those metrics. We do always set the like target compared to the best streams of the season. I'm going to be honest with you, Miami is going to be a really, really difficult one to beat, because Miami was an insane race. Obviously, Max Verstappen losing out to Lando Norris and me going absolutely mental meant that a lot of people did hit that like button. The likes on the Miami Grand Prix was 805 likes. To be honest with you, if we can, go 100 at a time, if we can get up to 100, then maybe up to 200, that would be a very, very good stream, because second place to Miami, I think, is China, and China's 350, so less than half. Miami is a massive outlier in terms of the number of likes we got, but that is your goal there if you want to aim for it. 805 was the Miami Grand Prix like total. Arsenal have the most trophies in London, so London is clearly red there. Daniel Ricciardo, I'm quite excited to see what Daniel Ricciardo can do from 9th, to be fair. I feel like Tsunoda, Ricciardo and Hamilton might end up having quite a nice little battle in the mix there. We saw Hamilton and Tsunoda have a battle in Miami, so why not again? Merc changes are working slowly. I think that's the thing, it's too slowly, right? Everyone else is also improving, and they're improving beyond the stretch. Like, Ferrari, McLaren just keep putting themselves outside of that touch and distance, and every time Mercedes bring an upgrade, it does upgrade their car, don't get me wrong. They do get quicker, but everyone else also gets quicker, and that's the thing. They're not gaining on the cars in front, is what I'm trying to say. Silver play button for Abu Dhabi. Again, we'll see. We'll see. I'd love it. I'd absolutely love it. Don't get me wrong. It's been like a childhood dream of mine, but we'll get there. Remember finding you at 5K? Go to Formula 1 YouTuber. Thank you, Josh. Hello, Jamie, mate. Hello, hello. How are you doing? Jamie in the chat. Sally said, we're all here. So it's nearly a full house of names that I am used to seeing at this point. Mallory in there as well. The only way to beat the likes from the Miami GP is for Alonso to win. Maybe. Maybe, just maybe. I hope. I mean, if Fernando Alonso goes from 20th to 1st, I've already got some videos lined up for next week, but I feel like they just go out of the window. I feel like every single video would have to be about how on earth Fernando Alonso managed to do that, considering he hasn't won a race in 10 years. That's a way to do it, right? Haven't won a race in 10 years. Okay, 20th to 1st is the next is the next race you get. That'd be absolutely ridiculous. When was it? Spain. I want to say Spain 2014 was Fernando Alonso's last win. So we're literally what? When's Spain this year? Got Monaco, Canada, Spain. So in 3 races time, it will have been 10 years to the race, if that makes sense. Like Spanish Grand Prix to Spanish Grand Prix for Fernando Alonso. 500 likes if Sainz wins. I wouldn't say no. Wouldn't say no. Subscribers because... Oh, thank you so much, Mallory. That is very, very kind. The Red Bull / Max isn't a virtual guarantee win. We're getting there. We're slowly getting there to Max Verstappen not being a guaranteed win. It's going to be one of those things where, again, we get to the end of a regulation cycle. Like it happened in 2021. We got to the end of the regulation cycle, new regs coming in for 2022, and everyone kind of decided that season was going to be an absolute banger. It looks like, again, we're going to have that. 2025, as we build towards it, looks like it could be really, really fun as a season. Because as I say, I think Red Bull are hitting a little bit of a plateau in terms of their performance. I think they've kind of found everything that they can at this point. And as everyone else catches up, we start to get to the point where the field is converging. Like, everyone is within a few percentage points of each other throughout qualifying. Like, especially if you look at, I know that we're going for a dominance era with Max Verstappen right now, but if you go back 20 years, right, when people are like, oh, Formula One was the best in the early 2000s, if you actually look at the spread of cars, like first place to last place, there was like seconds between them in terms of qualifying, and the percentages were ridiculous to the extent that we introduced 107% as a rule, where you, if you weren't within 7% of the time that the pole position had set, you were no longer allowed to take part in the race. Like, that's how far everyone was and the spread of drivers. Now, at least we've got 20 drivers, and they're all within, like, as I said, like 1 to 2% of each other. It is so competitive. It's just within that 1 to 2%, you still have a hierarchy. Whatever's going to happen, you have a hierarchy, but that hierarchy is starting to squish. And every single race and every single weekend, the cars get closer and closer together. And the gap between Verstappen, who is still undoubtedly the number one, and say, you know, a Logan Sargent or a Kevin Magnussen, that gap is getting smaller and smaller and smaller as we go through these regulation cycles. It's just that Max Verstappen is still the better driver. Like, at the end of the day, we want this to be a driving competition, and we want it to highlight the best drivers. And when you have the best drivers in the best cars, like we do at the top, I would argue the best drivers right now in Formula One are Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc. They're the top three right now, you know? That's kind of what you end up seeing. You end up with the best drivers in the best cars getting the best performance out of them. Oh, Jamie, thank you so much for the membership. 22 months as a supporter, absolute OG of the channel. You can support the channel by becoming a member. You get a lovely little badge. There is more membership stuff coming. I know I kind of keep saying that, but there's lots of behind the scenes bits and pieces with memberships that I'm starting to try and figure out. Like, it's a lot more complicated than I thought. And yeah, interesting. Love your shorts. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So you think McLaren will win the Constructors' Championship? London is red. McLaren will dominating the next few years, winning 3 of the next 5 seasons. I think the thing that McLaren also have right now is the strongest driver pairing. Zach Brown was asked about this in an interview recently, and he was like, you know, all the craziness of the driver market that's going on right now. And obviously his job is kind of involved in the driver market, getting the best drivers for the best teams, not only for the Formula One, but the Indy team and the Formula E team. Like, he is across all of that kind of McLaren stuff, if you will. All of McLaren motorsport he is across. And he genuinely feels like he's got McLaren to such a strong position in terms of their driver lineup that, like, in a couple of years' time, when Norris hits his peak, when Oscar gets closer to it, they are just going to be head and shoulders above the rest in terms of, like, the quality pairing that they've got and the performance that you can get out of both cars every single weekend. I mean, it's close, right? You're going to end up with Leclerc and Hamilton. That is a hell of a driver pairing. Verstappen and whoever he ends up next to. I personally think it should be Carlos Sainz. And again, I think that is a ridiculous driver pairing of Verstappen and Sainz. Just such a solid driver pairing. Russell, possibly with like an Antonelli, would be, depending on how quickly Antonelli kind of gets to grips with things, another really solid driver pairing. So there's lots of incredible talents in Formula One right now, it has to be said. And lots of drivers that are coming up soon, right? Ollie Behrman is another one to keep an eye out on. He's in 6 free practices this season. He's in 6 for a reason, because he's pretty much undoubtedly going to be in Formula One next year. Alpine double points. Not sure, Jaden. Not sure that one's going to happen. I also think Alonso's the second best driver to Verstappen right now. Yeah, no, like, he's up there, isn't he? Very much up there. Hey, not applicable, please promote the Discord server. Yes, of course. We have actually had a bit of a refresh over on the Discord server. So if you do have Discord, there is a link down in the description to actually all of my socials. So Instagram, TikTok, but Discord in particular head on over, get signed up to Discord. Lots and lots of good things coming there. And we have got a couple of people who are refreshing it slightly. So very interested to see where the Discord can go. And just using the Discord as a bit more of a to and fro. I know that we've got the community tab, but the Discord's just a little bit quicker, isn't it? We can keep in touch with one another a little bit more swiftly. So yeah, if you do have Discord, get signed up to that. What do I think Sainz will end up next season? I thought Red Bull. I thought that was the best opportunity for him moving forwards, and also a really, really solid signing for Red Bull. But it is looking tough for him to find a spot, isn't it? Aston Martin, I don't think will happen. I think they'll keep Lance Stroll. Then you're looking down towards, like, well, RB are the next highest ranked team right now. That's not going to happen, I don't think. Because he just wouldn't want to go there and be in the second Red Bull team again. Then you're looking at... It just starts to get worse, doesn't it? It's like he's looking at Haas. Could he go in and replace Kevin Magnussen, be alongside Ollie Behrman? Yes. Does he want to go to a team like Haas that has the smallest budget on the entire grid? Probably not. Then it's like Williams maybe goes in to replace Logan Sargent, but again, big step backwards. Sauber is the one, isn't it? Just because even though he'd be in a pretty disappointingly slow car with Carlos Sainz if he ended up at Sauber, at least he'd end up with a hell of a pay packet. He would end up as a ridiculous pay packet if he went to Audi. So I think that's it's looking more and more likely that that's going to be the case, isn't it? Why didn't I mention Lewis Hamilton still in the top 3 best drivers right now? I just don't think that he is. I just think his form is starting to drop off a little bit. I think that's not necessarily like his fault as well. The fact that he is driving this entire season for Mercedes, knowing that he's going to Ferrari next year, also doesn't help him. I think he again is kind of being given quite a few awkward cars to drive by Mercedes because they're effectively using him as a bit of a guinea pig this season, and trying lots of different setups on that Mercedes car, so he's never really getting into the swing of things. Yeah, I just think right now Lewis Hamilton isn't quite up there for me, but not to say that he can't revitalize that and jump up a little bit. Anyhow, wow, that half an hour went very, very quickly. We are almost headed into the Grand Prix. Let me double check I've got everything set up. We've got some radio messages from the drivers coming through already. 2 minutes to go. 1 minute 40. I love that Sauber literally do a countdown. It's every single weekend. It's Bottas and Joe. They get told every single like interval of time that is ready to go before the Grand Prix. What are the best tyres this weekend? I mean, again, it kind of depends. I feel like we'll see a lot of, well, we are seeing a lot of drivers start on the mediums. I feel like medium to hard just seems to be the generic Formula One strategy at this point. You start on the mediums, you move on to the hard compound tyre, you sort of edge it out from there. You see, well, if there's a safety car, we'll do this. If there's a red flag, we can do that. Like, just seems like medium onto hard is the generic setup for Formula One cars at this point. Today is Aston's day. Interesting. The longer Sainz waits, the lesser offers he will get. Very true. Very true. I think he's got to start making his mind up a little bit quickly. Obviously, we've had Alex Albon confirmed at Williams now. Hulkenberg confirmed at Sauber. Like, those seats are starting to get filled. Fernando Alonso confirmed at Aston Martin. It's starting to be that a lot of teams are putting the puzzle pieces in place. And I know there's still a long way to go. There's still over half the grid that isn't confirmed. But you can start to see where the grid is moving towards and the shape that it's going to be in next season. Let's have a little look at the track map because we have got drivers out on track. Let me quickly do that. Oh. Sector timings don't need. But you can see Max Verstappen now making his way down to turn 7 on the formation lap. As I said, Fernando Alonso starting from the pit lane. Just a little quick rundown. Everybody in the top 10 starting on the medium compound tyre. I think that's the optimal strategy. Medium onto hard, one stop strategy this weekend. Then we've got Sergio Perez is the first driver starting on the hard compound tyre in 11th place. Esteban Ocon starting on mediums. Lance Stroll, interestingly, having to start on a slightly used set of mediums. He's done one lap on those medium tyres before the start of this Grand Prix. We then got Alex Albon also on the mediums. Gasly going for something different on the soft compound tyre. Be interesting to keep an eye on his pace, especially at the early parts of the Grand Prix where that soft compound tyre should be at its peak. Although with the cars being a lot heavier towards the beginning of the Grand Prix, I always am a bit 50-50 on starting on the soft compound tyre. Valtteri Bottas starts on the medium, Joe on the hards. They've offset both of the Alfa Romeo cars, both of the Sauber cars, as you'd expect. Like Bottas and Joe kind of going for opposite strategies to one another, just in case there's a safety car or something that they can gain from. Kevin Magnussen starting on the medium compound tyre, Logan Sargent on the hards, and Fernando Alonso starting on the soft compound tyre. Interesting that Alonso's starting on the soft, to be honest with you, because I feel like when you're starting from the back of the grid, almost a little bit like Logan Sargent is doing, maybe you go for the hard compound tyre, and especially somewhere like Imola, where we have seen mistakes, we have seen drivers go off, we have seen drivers in the wall, you kind of gamble a little bit on a safety car, like you go really long on the first stint, and you hope for a safety car kind of around the middle of the race, where you can gain a lot of time and a lot of advantage, but also you lose out on a lot of time early on because everyone is rattling around on the mediums, whereas you're on the hard compound tyre. So it's that balance, but Fernando Alonso going for the opposite of that and wanting to make up positions on track early. Going for the soft compound tyre, and he's going to be at the back of Logan Sargent very, very swiftly, you'd imagine. And chomping at the bit to try and get up towards the point scoring places in that Aston Martin car. We have got all 20 cars lined up on the grid. Well, 19 cars on the grid. Fernando Alonso starting from the pit lane. Let's see. Green flag is waved then. And let's get underway here in Imola. Max Verstappen points his Red Bull towards Lando Norris. Lando Norris, a really good getaway. They're going to be side by side going down towards turn 2. Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz also side by side in the Ferraris. Is going to be very tight going down and towards turn 2. Max Verstappen gets away. Charles Leclerc has a little wobble, but keeps his place ahead of Carlos Sainz. Piastri also comes around. Hamilton and Hülkenberg have gained on Yuki Tsunoda. Daniel Ricciardo's also dropped a couple of positions. Sergio Perez up into the point scoring places in 10th. Ocon, Stroll and Albon have kept themselves where they are, but Pierre Gasly dropping out, and Kevin Magnussen with a lightning start there, up into 15th place already in the Haas car, and actually attacking Alex Albon ahead. Ocon and Stroll also battling with one another side by side for another couple of corners, but Ocon gets the place ahead of Lance Stroll. Kevin Magnussen then actually loses out in that battle to Alex Albon and drops behind Pierre Gasly once again. Bottas and Joe, though, taken advantage of, and Magnussen gets ahead of them. But it is Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Sainz, Piastri are top 5. Russell and Hamilton slot in 6th and 7th place. Hülkenberg keeps himself up in the points. Tsunoda in 9th place as well. And Sergio Perez rounding out the top 10 as we head towards the end of the first lap. Verstappen crosses the start-finish line to start lap 2 of the Grand Prix. And let's see, where are people lining up? Obviously, DRS will be enabled on this second lap of the Grand Prix as well. But it's Hülkenberg and Hamilton that have been the big gainers in the points so far. Kevin Magnussen also jumping up a couple of positions. Be interesting to see what happened to Yuki Tsunoda there. Dropped down a couple of places and lost a little bit of pace through that first lap, did Yuki Tsunoda. Possibly just a poor start from the Japanese driver. I'll keep you updated if we do get to see a replay of it. Sergio Perez, though, already knocking on the door of his Red Bull friend, Yuki Tsunoda, and hoping that he can get past the RB fairly swiftly. Max Verstappen already outside of DRS range of Lando Norris, and it's looking like Max Verstappen has really found his form in that Red Bull as the weekend has progressed. And maybe, just maybe, will once again show that once he is in the lead of a Grand Prix, he is very difficult to contend with. Charles Leclerc also drops without DRS range, sort of hovering around that 1 second mark. Needs to keep himself within 1 second of Lando Norris to get that DRS, of course, and does just about. DRS open for Charles Leclerc, also for Carlos Sainz. But we're seeing the cars come around, and you can see the lap times coming in then for each of the drivers. Nobody really going at one another, even with the DRS down towards turn 2 at this moment in time. Looking on board at Gasly and Albon. Hulkenberg, Kevin Magnussen also in the mix there. And Fernando Alonso also catching up to the back of Logan Sargent, interestingly, is now within DRS range of the Williams. So really solid first lap from Fernando Alonso, kind of kept him in the mix. Now needs to start making those positions if he can. Obviously, still really high fuel at this point, and also very early on in terms of the degradation of the tires. So I'm not expecting a lot of big moves and gambles as of yet. But Imola could be an interesting one to see how these tires do hold up. A little bit of a shake from Lando Norris as he comes around the final couple of corners. Seen a lot of drivers in the gravel there, actually, just after turn 18 as they head towards turn 19 and then the start-finish line. Seen quite a few drivers dip their tyres into the gravel over the weekend. It'll be interesting to see if that is also a place that comes up here. Also, Lando Norris kind of keeping himself exactly a second behind Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen kind of got that lead very, very quickly in terms of the first lap, but then it's just kind of sat at that range with Lando Norris just behind. Oscar Piastri also bearing down on the Ferrari, but Carlos Sainz also with DRS. So at the moment, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz doing like a nice little duo battle against Oscar Piastri and making sure that Carlos Sainz keeps himself a good distance from the McLaren. Russell is also now a couple of seconds off the back of Piastri, so you can see already that gap between Piastri and Russell starting to elongate a touch. Hamilton keeping his teammate within touching distance, though. Hulkenberg is doing a really solid job in 8th place. Tsunoda in 9th still. Sergio Perez yet to get past Yuki Tsunoda, but again, on the harder compound tyre, will be going a lot longer than Yuki Tsunoda on this stint. So maybe just holding onto those tyres a touch. And then once Yuki Tsunoda's mediums start to go off, then he makes that opportunity count. Goes on, does the longer stint on the harder compound tyres. Tsunoda will have to pit, of course. All the medium tyre runners in front of Perez will have to pit earlier on. And you'll see whether or not Yuki Tsunoda will be able to actually keep pace with Sergio Perez. Let's have a little look then at the start. Seeing a replay. And maybe not. Was about to see a replay of the start of the Grand Prix, but dropped backwards. Pierre Gasly, interestingly, the fastest lap of anybody so far, is on the soft compound tyre and still a long way to go, but fastest at the moment. That being said, Max Verstappen just proves me wrong and does the fastest lap of the race, doesn't he? Max Verstappen out in front once again. Here is that replay of the race start. I want to see what happened to Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda, yeah, just gets bullied a little bit by Nico Hulkenberg. Hulkenberg with a much better start. And then Hulkenberg can carry a lot more speed in. So Hulkenberg's made up that place. And yeah, Hulkenberg, really, really good start from Nico there. Just kind of edges out both of the RB cars, puts both RB cars off the racing line. That means that Nico Hulkenberg gets himself right up amongst it. Tsunoda's actually having a little look at the Mercedes car. That means he's off the racing line. And Hulkenberg goes around the outside at turn 2 and gets ahead. Yeah, really, really solid start from Nico Hulkenberg. Well worth watching the onboard of that if you get the opportunity to. When you think about it, Verstappen is the most consistent driver on the grid. Absolutely. That's the thing. Max Verstappen is just robotic in terms of his ability to just do it over and over and over again. Oh, was there a little bit of a touch there between Ocon and Stroll? Quite possibly, you know. Might have been a little touch between the Alpine and the Aston Martin. Max Verstappen has just elongated that lead a touch. Now up to 2 seconds between Verstappen and Norris. Charles Leclerc also now outside of DRS range of the McLaren. Carlos Sainz is outside DRS range of his teammate. Oscar Piastri, the first driver with DRS in the pack. And Piastri moving up to within half a second of Carlos Sainz there. Definitely an opportunity for him to make up positions, Oscar Piastri, after getting that 3-place penalty. Russell and Hamilton seem to be just sort of fairly happy to drive around all by themselves. Hulkenberg now 3.5 seconds off Hamilton. So Russell and Hamilton all by themselves in the middle of the pack. Hulkenberg just holding off Yuki Tsunoda at this moment in time. And Tsunoda with the DRS is actually causing Perez a little bit of a headache because Sergio Perez trying to get past Tsunoda but doesn't have the DRS advantage because Tsunoda is still within touching distance of Nico Hulkenberg. That kind of trio could be a nice little battle to have a little look at. Carlos Sainz over the radio says the McLaren is fast. Good luck, Carlos. Come on, Oscar. Let's see what you can do. I'd love a double podium finish from the McLaren team today. Oscar Piastri absolutely deserved to be on the podium last time out in Miami, in my opinion, and definitely deserves to be higher up. It was just such a silly thing to get that 3-place penalty, and I really hope that he can make up that position. We're on board with Oscar Piastri, actually, looking at the back of Carlos Sainz, and you can just see gaining and gaining through the DRS zone. This is where Oscar Piastri just needs to be a little bit careful. We have seen that Oscar Piastri does burn through his tyres a little bit too quickly for my liking. And I don't want him to burn through those mediums too quickly. And then actually, even if he does get ahead of Carlos Sainz, be vulnerable to falling back behind Carlos when those tyres eventually give out. The tyre degradation around Imola is not too bad. It's not as bad as some of the other tracks where we have seen Piastri really struggle, like Australia, for instance, Bahrain a little bit as well, although strategy did go against him then too. Hope for a McLaren podium. Looking very, very likely with Lando Norris right now. 1.5 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz win, I think, of the two Ferraris is looking more likely that Leclerc, not only because he's ahead on track, but also because Carlos Sainz does seem to just be struggling a touch more in terms of his radio messages to the team. And also is now under a lot of pressure from Piastri, so he's going to lose a bit of time in the battle with the McLaren as well. If Sainz wins, let's wait for George's usual ritual on the last lap. Now, George Russell looks insanely comfortable in 6th place now. Albon, Gasly, and Bottas coming into the pits, is that? No, okay. What's that? No, they are in the pits. Going very, very early there. Going for kind of a zero-stop strategy, maybe? Where they come in super, super early and try and go all the way to the end on a set of hard compound tyres. I'll keep you updated, but Albon, Gasly, and Bottas all into the pits already. Interesting. And it is hard compound tyres on Alex Albon's car. Maybe, you know, we could see Alex Albon, Gasly, and Bottas now just go 55 laps on a set of hard compound tyres. Interesting that all three of them came in exactly the same time as well. Oh, no, Alex Albon, slow. So Gasly gets in front. Bottas also gets in front. Alonso just passes Albon. What's wrong with Albon's car? Albon going very, very slowly. Literally just come out of the pits. And going super slow. Radio. Tyre's not on properly. Tyre's not on for Alex Albon. He's going to have to do a whole lap with the tyre not connected to the car in the correct configuration. Possibly the tyre just sort of spinning around when it shouldn't be. We obviously saw Sauber have a really tough time with getting their tyres attached to the car earlier on this season. That's why we saw so many really long pit stops from the Sauber team. Maybe Williams have just tried to be a little bit too quick there, knowing that Gasly and Bottas were coming in at the same time. They've just overdone it a touch, although Albon is now absolutely nowhere, and I think might have come to a stop. Oh no, he's just slowing right down on the chicane because Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Sainz are all trying to make their way past Alex Albon, and Albon has just become a little bit of a bollard, effectively, for those drivers. But Albon making his way around with that loose tyre and is going to be completely out of any kind of chance of getting anything from this Grand Prix, unfortunately, now. Unless there is maybe a safety car. Could get him back on. Fernando Alonso is an interesting one, though. Also came in, swapped onto the hard compound tyre a little bit earlier than the rest. And is still behind the likes of Gasly and Bottas as well. So Alonso on a bit of a weird strategy too. Sargent and Joe obviously started on the hard compound tyre, so they're just ahead of that pack. Interesting. Albon back out again. We'll keep an eye on Alex Albon then. Was it just the wheel or was it something wrong with the team? Let's have a look at this pit stop. From on board, doesn't look like anything is up with the wheels as such. Obviously, there is a little checker as well inside the wheel that sort of tells the team whether or not it's done up fully, and they have to wait for a green light before they can send the driver back out again. But yeah, interesting. Albon now a lap behind everybody else, though, is the problem. Oscar Piastri having a little look at Carlos Sainz. Oh, has a look through Tamburello, but not able to do it this time around. Ricciardo comes into the pits then. Maybe doing a similar kind of strategy to those guys that have just come in. So Daniel Ricciardo is going to slot in behind Joe and Sargent. So at the head of that pack that is on the fresh set of hard compound tyres. He did 11 laps on those medium tyres. And just coming to the end of the pit lane now, Daniel Ricciardo. So whatever that strategy is, Daniel Ricciardo also going for it and is going to be at the front of that pack. So if there is like a... I don't even know what they're aiming for here. Maybe a safety car or something. But again, not gaining too much. Yeah, not sure. Going to be an interesting one to see how that kind of unfolds itself. Alonso taking a stroll today. I think he's just... he's kind of gone for that hard compound tyre too as Fernando Alonso. Slightly used set, actually, on Fernando Alonso's car. Interesting. Alonso should just retire the car. I think it's a little bit too early for that. Like, you can understand why teams remain in the race, you know what I mean? Like, there's still data to be held, and there could be something absolutely mental happen later on in the Grand Prix, but I can kind of understand where you're coming from. Pretty good stop from Yuki Tsunoda. Is a bit of a, it's a strategy, isn't it? Yuki Tsunoda's going for it as well. Started on the medium, did 12 laps. Comes in, comes out, still ahead of his teammate. 15th place, Yuki Tsunoda now. Fernando Alonso then. What happened here? Slow stop. Slow pit stop. For Fernando Alonso, that was why. He also fell behind the rest by a considerable amount. Oh, front brakes were on fire. Oh my goodness me. Yeah, front left tire. Fernando Alonso's front left brake literally on fire until he manages to get out of the pits and speed up to put that fire out. Oscar Piastri still within DRS range of Carlos Sainz. Still having a look at the back of the Ferrari. Not quite this time around. Of course, with Albon, Albon had an issue where one of his tyres felt like it wasn't attached properly. So ended up coming into the pits again. That's why Albon has got 2 pit stops to everybody else's 1. Nico Hülkenberg has come in to join those cars that have swapped onto the hard compound tyre as well. I think maybe kind of looking at Tsunoda's time, and they're going to be side by side. Tsunoda's coming down the pit straight, and Tsunoda gets the position. So Hülkenberg trying to cover off Yuki Tsunoda, and Tsunoda with a stunning lap, getting out of the pits. And Tsunoda gets himself back up ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. So Tsunoda gaining massively in that little battle between those two. And back up ahead of Hülkenberg, who obviously took that position from Tsunoda at the start of the Grand Prix. So really well done, Yuki Tsunoda there. Have to hand it to him. Sargent is the first driver up for Yuki Tsunoda. I'm just trying to see that gap. 8.8 seconds between Tsunoda and Sargent. And everybody in front of Sargent yet to pit. So Tsunoda now in the lead of that pack of drivers that have pitted. Interesting. Albon already lapped? Yeah, but he did do a very, very, very slow lap because he had a tyre issue. So we can let him off for this one. We can let him off for this one, can we? Why won't Albon just retire the Williams? There's still, data to get. There's still things to learn. You can still understand why he would continue on. Williams will still want to do. It's almost like a long testing run at this point now for Albon. Like if they want to, they can kind of turn the engine down so that they know they're doing minimal wear and tear of it. But they can just run some different bits and pieces. Like any lap you get in a Formula 1 car, especially because testing is the testing days are so few and far between in Formula 1 at this moment. Any laps you can get are worthwhile. That's why they don't just retire the car, even though, yeah, as you say. Well, there's 2 reasons, right? Testing is so few and far between that you might as well continue running, because you're going to get data and you're going to get things that you can learn from. And secondly, something mental might happen. Like, it's not outside of the realms of possibility that there might be like a crazy incident and a safety car and a red flag and I don't know, all of that goes on. And then suddenly you're in a weird position where Albon, even though he's a lap down, could be fighting for a point. And if you're Williams this season, 1 point would be absolutely massive. So, yeah, I think the Williams garage doing the right thing by leaving Alex out for a little bit longer. Charles Leclerc also, interestingly, has started to gain quite significantly on Lando Norris. Norris now 5 seconds off the leader, Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc just a couple of seconds behind Norris, but in recent laps has been closing that gap. Carlos Sainz also has been able to keep Oscar Piastri at bay, and Oscar Piastri dropping outside of DRS range of Carlos Sainz. Russell and Hamilton kind of still going around all by themselves. 2 seconds off the back of Piastri, but 10 seconds then the gap to Sergio Perez in 8th place between Hamilton in 7th. So Russell and Hamilton just kind of a very, very dull race for them all by themselves. They're keeping slightly in touching distance with Piastri and Sainz, but nothing really for Piastri to worry about at this point. Lance Stroll coming around in 9th place, Ocon in 10th. But again, A few drivers have already come into the pits that were in that mix. Sonoda, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo were all ahead of Stroll, Ocon, Magnussen, that little pack that we've got running down from 9th to 11th. Zhou Guanyu also on the back there. Starting on the hard compound tire as well, Zhou Guanyu. So Zhou and Sargent also on a very different strategy to everybody else. Very, very interesting. I feel like this is all going to have to kind of work its way around for a few laps, and it's not going to fully play out until the final few laps of the Grand Prix, where it feels like those final point scoring places, you know, your 8th, 9th, 10th, could be up for grabs for almost anyone, depending on the strategy that they're able to make work and whether or not there's a safety car at some point during this Grand Prix. Obviously, if there is a safety car, it would massively hurt the guys that have already stopped. Sonoda, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, Gasly, Bottas, Alonso would be very, very frustrated by a safety car, especially if it comes before some of those medium and hard compound tyre drivers ahead of them stop. Charles Leclerc getting a plan B confirmation on the radio. I feel like plan A is start on the medium tyre, go on to the hard compound tyre at sort of halfway through the Grand Prix. So it'd be interesting to see what plan B is, whether or not that's go a little bit longer or maybe come in a bit sooner. Oh, Sergio Perez with a lockup. And Sergio Perez in the gravel. Now 15 seconds off the back of Lewis Hamilton. And through the gravel goes Sergio Perez. That is, where is that? Just coming down 16, turning into 17 and 18. Sergio Perez in the gravel continues, I should say, has continued on, but lost a lot of time. And Sergio Perez really out of shape in that Red Bull this weekend. So maybe the start of something pretty bad for Sergio Perez, isn't it? Sergio Perez, there you go, lost 4.5 seconds to the cars behind by going through the gravel there, did Sergio. And this is, not to kind of jinx it a little bit, this is kind of the point in the season last year where Sergio Perez started to struggle. I seem to remember Monaco in particular, obviously crashing out in qualifying, having a really tough weekend. Just seemed like the start of the end for Sergio Perez's season last year. And then it just continued to spiral, really, until we got right towards the end of the season. Like, it kind of went from Monaco all the way through the summer break into when we were almost, like, even when we were at Japan and Mexico, he was still having a lot of trouble, Sergio Perez. And I hope it's not the same this season. Don't get me wrong. Like, I really do want Sergio Perez to do well. It would be interesting to see, obviously, if his form does start to fall off, whether or not that ability to hold on to that Red Bull seat. Some people saying, well, after the start to this season that he's had, maybe he deserves to stay at Red Bull. Not sure they would be convinced if he has a very similar season to last year. And as I said, it was around about this point in the season, race 7, race 8, where it started to fall apart for him. Oscar Piastri is still within DRS of Carlos Sainz, you know. Kind of cut back to him every now and then, but just not within touching distance at this moment in point. Ferrari's going a little bit longer on their first strategy by the looks of things. How are we doing in the chat? Surely overtake available for Oscar. He's closing in. He gets to within kind of half a second of Carlos Sainz every single lap, but just doesn't have that final little bit right now, does Oscar Piastri. And Carlos Sainz will be doing everything in the book, obviously charging his battery through those slower corners, making sure that he's ready to defend from Oscar Piastri, putting himself in the best position going through turns 17, 18, 19 to make sure that DRS is negated a touch. Interesting. If we could leave a like on the channel, that would be absolutely, or on the stream, sorry, that'd be absolutely amazing. The like target to beat, if you want to try and beat Miami, that was 805 likes, which is an absolute ridiculous amount, to be honest with you. The second best is the Chinese Grand Prix a couple of weeks before that was 359. So 300 likes is the target, really, in terms of the like target to beat the builder. Interested to see how that progresses. As I say, 805, a Lando Norris victory. That's going to be very difficult to top, isn't it? What are the chances of Audi making one hell of a car and finally making Hulkenberg a championship contender? Championship contender, not so sure. I do think it's just going to take a little bit of time. I don't think that Audi are going to come into 2026 and already be this incredible force moving forwards. You know what I mean? I do feel like there's going to be points where Audi look good. There's going to be points where Audi look bad. It's going to take time for them to really get into the mix. Like, look at where Sauber or Kick, whatever you want to call them, are this weekend. They are quite far adrift of the championship contending positions. And an Audi engine is going to be a big upgrade. Don't get me wrong. Like, I feel like if they can get their own upgrade, if they can get their own package right, it's a huge thing for them. But it's not going to completely change their fortunes overnight. It's going to take a little while for Audi to really click into gear. So Hulkenberg as a championship contender, no. Hulkenberg to finally get a podium, maybe in a race where there's a little bit of chaos. I think so. I think he's in that position now. He's put himself in that window where he keeps performing like he does as well. Definitely could get up there. George Russell then, the first of the front runners, as we can see them now, to come into the pits. 9th place, he's going to come out. I can just see Esteban Ocon coming around the corner. He's going to come out behind Ocon, you know. That's not a great place for Russell to really come out. If he would have come out in front of Ocon, yes, but behind Ocon, not so sure. Because it just feels like he's going to be stuck behind Ocon for a good few laps, and he's going to lose out a little bit. This is where Lewis Hamilton can really put on the pressure then. If Hamilton can come out in front of this pack. Lando Norris, box. Fernando Alonso is 5 seconds behind Bottas. Yeah, that Aston Martin just feels like it's nowhere this weekend. Feels like Fernando Alonso's really struggled to get to grips with it, and then started from the pit lane, wasn't really able to do much, had a slow pit stop. Everything you could really ask for has gone wrong for Fernando Alonso this weekend. Alex Albon with a 10-second penalty for leaving the pit lane with all 4 wheels not fully attached. So 10-second penalty for Albon. Lando Norris trying to come out in front of Sergio Perez. Isn't going to come out in front of Sergio Perez. And again, same with Russell and now Norris. The driver that they really needed to come out in front of, they haven't. So George Russell has actually just been able to jump up in front of Esteban Ocon and get to where he should have been. But now we're looking at Lando Norris having to get past Sergio Perez, and it just makes it so much more awkward, right? And it just puts that little bit extra tire deg onto those tires. Just costs you that little bit of extra time that you just don't need. Although Russell here with the overtake on Ocon. Let's have a little look at it. Goes past the start-finish line. Ocon moves to the right-hand side of the track. Russell through turn 1. Yeah, just moves to the left-hand side. And by the time they get to turn 2, easily ahead was George Russell. Now it's whether that Mercedes has pace on that hard compound tyre. Here comes Oscar Piastri then into the pits. And he's going to hopefully come out in front of Lance Stroll, you would hope. Possibly in front of George Russell. There's a little gap there as well. But Lando Norris, DRS wide open, peels over to the left-hand side of the track, looking to try and move in front of Sergio Perez, and does move in front of Sergio Perez. And the move is done by Lando Norris, goes through turn 2, and has retaken that position. Oscar Piastri, there it is, that gap behind Lance Stroll. So got a good little gap as Oscar Piastri. Couple of seconds to Lance Stroll ahead, a few seconds to Russell behind. can really get those tyres hopefully in the perfect position for the rest of the Grand Prix. 10-second penalty outside of Albon's control. Completely, yeah. Just, I'm very, very unfortunate for Alex Albon. Won't really make too much of a difference. He is a lap off the lead, but it's very, very unfortunate. Verstappen comes in. There you go then. Verstappen obviously looking at Lando Norris there in 5th place is where he wants to come out. Might even come out in front of Lewis Hamilton. I wasn't looking at the gaps between them. No, Lewis Hamilton just making his way past the start-finish line. So Verstappen will come out in front of Lando Norris, but behind Lewis Hamilton by a chunk, actually. I didn't realise the gap between Verstappen and Hamilton was that small. Oscar Piastri looking at the back of Lance Stroll already. Wow, that was very quick from Oscar Piastri. Caught up to the back of the Aston Martin and ahead of the Aston Martin already. I was expecting maybe a few laps where Oscar Piastri would kind of sit behind the Aston and warm up his tyres. But no, Piastri going for it straight off the bat. So it is the Ferraris then that we are waiting to pit. Sainz also looking like he would come out behind Piastri in terms of the time. So Sainz needs to go a little bit longer and keep putting on the pressure. But Piastri going early might get the undercut here. Lewis Hamilton in 3rd place also looking vulnerable because George Russell's going very, very quickly on that fresh set of hards. Leclerc box. Does feel like Ferrari might have gone a little bit long here. Charles Leclerc comes into the pits. Needs to be a clean stop. Moderately clean from Ferrari. A 2.8 stop for the Scuderia. Feels like Lando Norris is going to be able to get past fairly easily as he comes past the start-finish line. Charles Leclerc still in the pit lane. There is Norris going past. Perez going past as well. And Charles Leclerc slots in, yeah, literally just behind Sergio Perez. Wow. Oscar Piastri has come to life. A 19.9 from Oscar Piastri. I think he wanted to try and jump both Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, you know. That is a hell of a lap from Oscar Piastri there. And now he's going to have Carlos Sainz behind him after he stops. Oh, Lewis Hamilton. What's going on there? Hamilton, I think, made a mistake somewhere. 11, 12, maybe 13 for Lewis Hamilton, or possibly an issue because got overtaken by Alex Albon. There's dirt on the tyres of Lewis Hamilton. I think he's gone off track somewhere. Charles Leclerc trying to get past Sergio Perez because you can see Oscar Piastri gaining on this pair. And Sergio Perez really cutting into Charles Leclerc's race time. I'll tell you what, he is doing a really solid job, Sergio Perez, at making sure Charles Leclerc is nowhere near the victory this afternoon. Not that Max Verstappen was under much pressure, but Charles Leclerc has lost quite a bit of time there behind Sergio Perez. Finally gets back ahead of the Red Bull. Oscar Piastri is going to also be right underneath the rear wing of the Red Bull. And we'll get past Perez straight away. Oscar Piastri trying to go towards it. And a great move from Oscar Piastri down towards turn 4 and 5. 5 and 6 from Oscar Piastri. And he's going to be right underneath Charles Leclerc. So Oscar Piastri has gone from fighting with Carlos Sainz to now fighting with Charles Leclerc. And Carlos Sainz is going to be well behind this pack, I think, in terms of his lap times that he's done. Carlos Sainz obviously led the race for a little while there, but it just feels like Ferrari have gone too late. Too late, in my opinion. Hamilton is also box. Hamilton's going to be way off George Russell as well. So this is where we need to keep an eye on the likes of Tsunoda and Hülkenberg and Ricciardo. Oh, has Logan Sargent come in? No, he's not. Logan Sargent's been overtaken by Tsunoda and Hulkenberg. Ouch. Hamilton in the pits then. There is Charles Leclerc. Oscar Piastri goes past. Carlos Sainz then going to drop in behind Sergio Perez. There's George Russell going past. And Lewis Hamilton is going to come out behind Stroll. Hamilton, look at that gap between Hamilton and Russell now. Remember, they were right on top of each other. Maybe separated by a couple of seconds, Russell and Hamilton. Now 8 seconds behind. Here's the replay of it then, Lewis Hamilton. Coming through Aqua Mineral. Oh, just gets way too deep. Understeered wide into the gravel from Lewis Hamilton at turn 12. And that's where that lap time just disintegrated. Ooh. That is a hell of an overtake from Yuki Tsunoda. Why didn't we see that live? Yuki Tsunoda with the move on Logan Sargent. Gets right around the outside of turn 2. Sticks it on the inside in turn 3. And a wonderful, wonderful move from Yuki Tsunoda. Hulkenberg also then gets past Sargent in a similar fashion to what we saw Oscar Piastri getting past Sergio Perez. That is such a lovely move from Yuki Tsunoda, though. And Tsunoda up into 12th place. But again, Tsunoda has stopped. So Zhou Guanyu and Kevin Magnussen yet to stop in front of him. Similarly, Lance Stroll yet to have stopped as well on the medium compound tyre. Looks like Perez got damaged when he drove off track. I mean, I'm not surprised. Bumped and bounced all over the gravel. And really struggling now. Oscar Piastri, though, just goes to show that pit stop coming in that little bit earlier. Look at the gap he's now got to Carlos Sainz as well. Those really fast laps from Oscar Piastri have put him in such a lovely position. Not looking like a podium as of yet, but closer to it. 4th place for Oscar Piastri. The podium place is just ahead of him. Charles Leclerc within DRS range. Oof. Where is the pace from Lewis? Unfortunately, Lewis made a mistake. Made a mistake down towards turn 12, did Lewis Hamilton. Lost a lot of time. Similar to Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez went off and into the gravel as well. Hamilton also in the gravel. Sainz staring at the back of Sergio Perez, as I mentioned, the Red Bull driver. Carlos Sainz desperate to now gain back that position and hunt down Oscar Piastri, who he's lost out to. Sergio Perez putting the moves on, though, trying to defend from Carlos Sainz and can't do it. Carlos Sainz on the fresher hard compound tyres, so much fresher hard compound tyres, gets that move done down towards turn 2. So Carlos Sainz up into 5th. 6.5 seconds, though, the gap to Oscar Piastri. So that's going to be almost Carlos Sainz done and dusted this afternoon. I can't imagine him making up 6.5 seconds in the next 35 laps. So it is Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc, Piastri, and Sainz, who have all come in for their pit stop as well. We're expecting this to be a one-stop race. So they are done with their pit stops. Sergio Perez, the first driver yet to have pitted. He is on 29 laps on those hard compound tyres, 0 pit stops so far. George Russell has pitted, it has to be said, in 7th place. And George Russell actually catching the back of Sergio Perez. So Sergio Perez, I'm not sure, really doing the right thing here. Maybe praying for a safety car or doing something. Oscar Piastri told that the degradation on all cars looks a little bit higher than expected, but wants to stick to plan B. George Russell has a little look at Sergio Perez. Almost did what he did to Valtteri Bottas a few years ago when he was in the Williams. Smacks into the back of him, but manages to dodge the back of Sergio Perez and get the move done. So George Russell now up in front of Sergio Perez once again. Sergio Perez 7th place now. And with Lance Stroll, who also is yet to stop, Piastri has come in. Gasly has come in for a second stop on the hard compound tyres. Alex Albon's already done 4 stops, by the way. Ouch, 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 ouch. Perez might pit soon. Needs to, well, he needs to keep going, actually. Sergio Perez kind of needs to do at least another sort of 4 or 5 laps on those hard compound tires and then swap onto the mediums, in my opinion. He only really wants to have kind of 27, 28 laps left to do on those medium tires, if possible. And obviously, he'll be on the medium tire. There'll be a little bit of more life in them, and he'll be on lower fuel load. So maybe they're kind of hoping that the pace will come back to Sergio Perez towards the end of the race. He's losing a lot of time now, though. If you look at his lap times, you know, Verstappen a 120.5, Norris 120.6, Perez 123.6. So if that lap time is going to come back to Sergio Perez, it's going to have to be a lot of lap time. And it's going to have to happen very swiftly after he does make that change. So I feel like Sergio Perez almost needs to stick it out for a couple more laps, but it's going to be very, very tough to do so. Lance Stroll has actually just lost out to Lewis Hamilton as well. So Hamilton back up into 8th place. Lance Stroll still yet to stop, and on the medium tyre, Lance Stroll as well in 9th place. Ocon and Alonso swapping positions. And Alonso now up into 16th place. But Ocon still on the back of the Aston Martin. Gasly moving ahead of Sargent. Gasly on a fresh set of medium tyres. Looks like Sargent might have come in. Yeah, Sargent on a fresh set of medium tyres as well. It's weird because a lot of these strategies and a lot of these pit stops is not really going to tell us who is where right until towards the end of this Grand Prix, because we've still got Stroll, Magnussen and Joe yet to stop. We've got, though, the likes of Tsunoda and Hülkenberg, who are really deep onto their stints on these hard compound tyres. They came in very, very early. They might be under a lot of pressure towards the end if they can't hold on to these tyres as well as they can. Yuki Tsunoda, though, having a little go at Zhou Guanyu. Zhou Guanyu still yet to have stopped on the hard tyre, but Tsunoda not bothered by it and gets past Zhou Guanyu up into 11th place. And I'll tell you what, Yuki Tsunoda's on an absolute bloody flyer this weekend. I know that he lives here in Imola, but it doesn't mean that he gets to, you know, just drive around the track all the time. He is absolutely smashing it, is Yuki Tsunoda. Lewis Hamilton, little onboard from the Mercedes. What's going on here? That was the move on Lance Stroll. Very nice move, actually. Through turn 14 and 15. Just sticks it through the chicane. And Lance Stroll not really putting up too much of a fight, to be honest. But still a very nice move from Lewis Hamilton, has to be said. Nico Hülkenberg next in line to have a go at Zhou Guanyu then. The Chinese driver's found himself in hot water because Tsunoda, Hülkenberg and Ricciardo all kind of in that fight with one another. Hülkenberg will be desperate to hold on to the back of Yuki Tsunoda. Maybe we're going to see some 2-stop strategies here, you know, because I felt like the 1-stop was almost guaranteed, but with so many drivers coming in so early in the Grand Prix, maybe we'll see some 2-stoppers and kind of gamble on putting maybe a set of soft compound tyres on right towards the end of the Grand Prix and just absolutely rinsing them for what they're worth. Pray for Lewis overtake. I mean, he's still a mile off his teammate, and Sergio Perez is yet to pitted, so Sergio Perez will drop behind Hamilton once he stops, but Lando Norris on the radio, not very happy at all, actually. Just worried about his pace. Lando Norris, 6.5 seconds off. Charles Leclerc, that was comparable in terms of lap time. A 120.7 from Norris, a 120.7 from Leclerc. But Norris just not very happy at all with his race pace right now. The only thing Hamilton is cooking is his tyres. Albon renewed his contract with Williams. He did indeed, yeah. Although it's today, Albon's position is not because of Williams. Well, it's not because of the car. It's because of a bad pit stop. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a weird one. Multi-year contract with Williams, indeed. Please do WRC and WEC streams. I've debated doing an Indy 500 stream. Would we be interested in an Indy 500 stream? I know that's not WRC or WEC, but I've been because I watched the Indy 500 last year, I was kind of enticed by it. I don't watch IndyCar often, I'm going to be honest with you. So it would be from a perspective of a little bit of a novice viewer to IndyCar. I watch it very, very occasionally. But yeah, if you fancy it, I'd be more than happy to do a little Indy 500 stream. WRC and WEC 100%. Maybe. Again, I do have a full-time job is the issue. That's the issue right now I have, is I do have a full-time job, and therefore this is very much a weekend thing. Alright, I'll see what I can do in terms of the Indy 500. I'll see what I can do. See what I can do in terms of the Indy 500. Problem is, it's similar sort of time to like Monaco and all that, isn't it? To be honest, most people from your channel might not watch IndyCar and stuff. Well, that's what I mean. I don't really either. I don't really watch IndyCar, to be honest with you. So yeah, it would very much be a one-off. It would not be a streaming IndyCar for the rest of time. It would very much be a one-off IndyCar stream. It'd be more of a casual one as well, because I would not be able to talk in the kind of detail that I know Formula One, if you know what I mean. It would very much be like, is this happening? Indy 500 and the Monaco Grand Prix usually at the same time. Yeah, that's what I mean. It would kind of be like a back-to-back thing. So it'd have to be like, I'd do Monaco, and then it would go straight into the Indy 500. Hamilton through on Perez. There's the move that we were expecting. So Perez back into 8th place. And again, now that kind of group of 3 of Perez, Stroll, and Magnussen, they're not together on track at all. That is a very, very big gap between the 3 of them. But they are the 3 that have yet to have stopped. They're all together there. So Perez, Stroll, and Magnussen all together. The problem is Perez just got so little pace right now. Perez needs to come in now, to be honest. I think the time is now for Sergio Perez, honestly. And there it is, box from Sergio Perez. As I said, 26, 27 laps left. Sergio Perez will come in. That's kind of the strategy that they were going for. And sticking with it. Magnussen and Stroll, though, on the medium and still going, but also without any kind of pace. Ugh. Ooh, Esteban Ocon, yeah, has made the move and got past Fernando Alonso. So Ocon into 15th. Sergio Perez in and out. Lance Stroll actually follows Sergio Perez into the pits then. And Kevin Magnussen might also do the same. Yep, Kevin Magnussen also coming in. So that trio of cars that had yet to have pitted. Let's see then where Sergio Perez comes out. There's Tsunoda and Hulkenberg and Ricciardo all getting by. And Sergio Perez drops into 11th place. Lance Stroll's actually going to drop in behind Valtteri Bottas. So this is the thing, right? Sergio Perez, okay, yes, he is behind Tsunoda, Hulkenberg, Ricciardo, but he is now on a fresh set of medium compound tyres. So this is where Sergio Perez really has to kind of prove his worth. He's got a lot of time. He's got 25 laps, but he needs to get in front of Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, and Tsunoda. And to be honest with you, even finishing in 8th place, he's still miles off the front runners. He's a day and a half behind Max Verstappen is Sergio Perez today. And he's back in 11th place where he started. So this is where he needs to go. Those a lap behind between Max and the rest are making this harder. That's very true. Yeah, they're causing there's a lot of traffic at this moment in time. It's quite a short circuit. Although the lap time isn't like the shortest in the world, you know, it's nowhere near like Austria short. But we are starting to see quite a gap open up between the top and the bottom, and therefore it's just not happening right now. Esteban Ocon, this is the replay of his move on Fernando Alonso. Still ahead of the Aston Martin. Alonso in 15th place and has done 32 laps on that set of hard compound tyres, which are not going well for him at all. Oscar Piastri, interestingly, still has the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. So he's in 4th place. Couple of seconds off Charles Leclerc, though, so has dropped off the back of the Ferrari. And it's just kind of getting to the point in the race where, unfortunately, it feels like that might just be it in terms of the big moves moving on. Sergio Perez has actually jumped in front of Daniel Ricciardo and is half a second behind Hülkenberg, so we'll get that move done as well. But it feels like once Sergio Perez reaches 8th place, he's going to be like 30 seconds off Lewis Hamilton. So it doesn't feel like Sergio Perez is going to be able to do much from that position. You know, he's not going to be 2 seconds a lap quicker than Hamilton, or at least I don't expect him to be. And then Tsunoda and Hülkenberg have kind of done enough, haven't they? Tsunoda, well worth 9th place. Hülkenberg worth 10th. Daniel Ricciardo probably finishes 11th, just outside the points. And unfortunately, everybody, let's settle in, because I can't imagine much happening in the last few laps, if I'm honest. Probably not what I should say, should it? Probably should be less honest. Anything could happen, guys. Stick with it. Anything can happen here. This is crazy. We've got Kevin Magnussen making a move on Zhou Guanyu. We know that this is going to end in a red flag. Anything can happen. No, Kevin Magnussen eases up and Zhou Guanyu keeps the place above it. Remember, Kevin Magnussen is 2 penalty points away from a ban. So, needs to be a careful little boy, does Kevin Magnussen. Is on the fresher tyres, though, I think, Kevin Magnussen. Oh, only just fresher tyres on Kevin Magnussen's car compared to Zhou Guanyu. They're also both a lap down on the leaders, so not fighting for much down there. Ooh. Yeah, Charles Leclerc has been given the go-ahead to push. Maybe Leclerc's got something in it. After I literally just said I don't feel like much is going to happen, Leclerc now 1.3 seconds behind Norris. He's just stepped it up the last couple of laps. Gone for it. And here is Alonso in the pits. As I said, I thought Alonso might come in again and is in the pits once more. Alonso drops in behind Sargent. Yeah, Albon miles off the back as well. Yeah, it's a real... the cars towards the back of the pack, like Sargent, Alonso, and Albon, they must just be so bored at this point. There is absolutely zero going on at the back of the pack there. Hülkenberg has been dispatched by Sergio Perez, and Sergio Perez's final overtake will be Yuki Tsunoda, I would imagine. Tsunoda 29.9 seconds off Hamilton. So Sergio Perez will get this move done. Let's face it, he's on fresh medium compound tyres to Tsunoda, who is on 28 lap old hards, and RB aren't really battling with Red Bull in terms of the constructors either. So I don't imagine Tsunoda's going to put up too much of a fight. Does not and Tsunoda drops into 9th place. Feels like that's where he will end up, to be honest with you. So Perez, Tsunoda, Hulkenberg pretty much locked in for me in 8th, 9th, and 10th place. I was going to say the whole top 10 are locked in, but as we've just seen, Charles Leclerc has decided to turn up the gas a little bit. Thank you, Crazy Cookie, for subscribing to the channel. If you are new, hit that subscribe button. We're live for every single Grand Prix qualifying sprint race throughout the entire season, and possibly the Indy 500 as well, if I can get that to work. But also, we are producing shorts and long form content all the time. Well worth subscribing and leaving a like if you are enjoying the stream. The most likes we've had on a stream so far this season was Miami with 805. Second place was China, 350. So that is, if you can hit 350, it will hit the second most liked stream. If you can get all the way up to 800, I'd be impressed. That means every single person here would have to hit the like button right now. Get all the way up to 800, it will match Miami. Charles Leclerc, though, now within a second of Lando Norris. And let's zoom in on this Ferrari-McLaren battle then. Is the battle for second place. Still 7.5 seconds off Max Verstappen, who has disappeared off into the distance. But Charles Leclerc, all about it. Charles Leclerc told on the radio, "You are the fastest car on track." See just at the bottom there. Oh, it's just gone. But he is the fastest car on track, and he is absolutely going for it. Lando Norris has turned up the gas a little to try and keep Charles Leclerc at bay, but Leclerc now within DRS range of the McLaren. And feels like Charles Leclerc has just got a little bit more left in these hard compound tires. Still a way to go, though. 20 laps left to go, so Charles Leclerc doesn't want to burn through these tyres completely, although Lando Norris has been on the radio a couple of times saying, I just haven't got any more pace, just can't seem to find anything else. Ferrari need to get the points here. McLaren obviously closed the gap in the constructor standings last time out with Lando Norris picking up that victory. Kind of cancels out Carlos Sainz's victory in Australia in terms of points. Still looking like Ferrari will end up second in the constructors, but McLaren were looking like they could at least knock on the door of it. Not if Charles Leclerc is able to make this move and get a Ferrari in front of a McLaren. Because at the moment we do have both McLarens in front of both Ferraris. So overall, McLaren would take away more points this weekend. It would be marginal, but again, it's just closing in on second place in the constructors. Whereas if Charles Leclerc can get this move done, gets the Ferrari ahead of the McLaren and picks up a little bit more points. Tsunoda driver of the day, definitely in the mix for it, you know. Tsunoda's done very, very well indeed. I was quite impressed with Oscar Piastri. Those few laps that he did where he managed to put himself ahead of Carlos Sainz. Obviously didn't get the overtake done on track, but the way that he was able to do the undercut was very, very impressive. Although, yeah, it does feel like Tsunoda has done a real job there and just continued to shine in the midfield, hasn't he? Just getting the most out of that RB every single possible weekend. In fact, Daniel Ricciardo, I didn't realize, has actually lost out to Lance Stroll, hasn't he? So Daniel Ricciardo down in 12th place. And there we have Lance Stroll. Actually, Lance Stroll, you know, is within touch and distance of Nico Hulkenberg. And this is for the final point scoring place. Lance Stroll might have done... Well, Lance Stroll did similar to Sergio Perez in that he went really, really long on the first stint, swapped onto a fresh set of hards, and now actually is in a really solid position, Lance Stroll. Possibly Lance Stroll could be the driver of the day, depending on how many points he's able to pick up here. Especially with Fernando Alonso so far adrift in 19th place. Fernando Alonso actually does have the fastest lap of anybody, so that point would not be awarded. With Fernando Alonso getting the fastest lap, but being outside of the top 10. Anything can happen, just waiting for something to happen. Yep. Yeah, that's it. Who do I vote for driver of the day? It's too early, I think. Depending on what Lance Stroll can do here, I think he's had a very, very good race. Tsunoda's had a very good race, but Tsunoda might end up finishing behind Stroll. And there it is. Lance Stroll does make the move on Nico Hülkenberg and gets past. So 3.3 seconds then, the gap between Stroll and Tsunoda. Sergio Perez in 8th place, still 29 seconds off the back of Hamilton. So they're kind of settled in, I think. Charles Leclerc is still within a second of Norris, but still not able to make the move actually happen. So we've got Leclerc within DRS, but then Piastri 5 seconds, Sainz 5 seconds, 7 seconds to Russell, 6 seconds to Hamilton. Like, we've got some very big gaps in the top 10. Sergio Perez then 30 seconds behind. Tsunoda then another 10. Lance Stroll is the one, isn't it? Looking to close in on Yuki Tsunoda and has cost Nico Hülkenberg a point scoring place. George Russell, very inconsistent, says George Russell. 300 likes, we're close. We are pretty close, actually. Hit that like button if you haven't already. That'd be absolutely amazing. Helps me out to no end and completely free. Why wouldn't you? Completely free. Just pop it on. All good. Charles Leclerc's made a mistake. Ooh. Cuts across the grass. Charles Leclerc. A bump and a bruise in the Ferrari, and that has got him outside of DRS range once again. 14th and 15th. Sorry, the turn 14 and 15. Charles Leclerc's just made a little mistake there. $300 likes. Thank you guys so much. Incredible stuff. The moral of the story, don't crash your car or else you will have a rough weekend. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. It does feel like the race pace gap this weekend has been the biggest in a very, very long time. The race pace between the top and the bottom end. It just usually feels like most people finish on the lead lap at least, but it's 15 laps from the end and there's already 8 drivers that have been lapped. Ricciardo and Hülkenberg looking likely to be honest. Because they are 1 minute 17 and 1 minute 16 off the lead, and it's about 1 minute 20 around here, so they're going to be moving out of the way of Max Verstappen fairly swiftly, and Max Verstappen's going to have lapped all the drivers up to maybe even Stroll and Tsunoda, depending on how quick their final laps are. Second gaps are insane. That's what I mean. It just feels like this race more than any other, we're seeing a real stretch between the top end and the bottom end. But even in the pack, 5 and 6 second gaps between the drivers. Maybe it's just the way that the Imola circuit is kind of set out, if you know what I mean. Do I think Charles will get past Norris? I thought he might do, but then Leclerc went over the grass. And since that point, Leclerc has dropped to 2.6 seconds behind Lando. So although he got himself within DRS range and he was closing and closing and closing, he made a mistake. So that's it. Do I live stream every race day? Yes, I race. I'm live for every qualifying, sprint race, and Grand Prix throughout the entire season. And I will be live for Monaco next week. So Monaco, Grand Prix, and qualifying. No sprint weekend in sight at this moment in time. Although we had back-to-back sprint weekends in China and Miami. So we were live a lot of those couple of weekends. Norris will do 42 laps on the hard. It's not too bad, though, because so you can do 42 laps on the hard towards the end of the race. If you started on the hard compound tyre and you were doing 42 laps, probably not. And the difference is the fuel load in the car, right? As you do more and more laps, the car gets lighter and lighter and lighter. That's why we see the lap times also get a bit quicker every single lap. And the sort of degradation of the tyre is offset by the fact that the car is getting lighter and lighter. And here is Lance Stroll then making that move on Yuki Tsunoda that we knew was going to come up and gets it done. Lance Stroll, pretty bloody decent from the Aston Martin, not going to lie. Yuki Tsunoda running in the final point scoring place. He is 5 seconds ahead of Nico Hülkenberg though. Here you go, here's Kevin Magnussen. He can do something to excite the race up a little bit, maybe cause a safety car. No, Kevin Magnussen makes a smooth move past Esteban Ocon and gets himself up into 14th place. Magnussen actually on a little bit of a tear. He's got Valtteri Bottas up next, who's a couple of seconds ahead of him, but then a 12-second gap to Ricciardo. So Magnussen might just end up finishing 13th place here. And only a couple of positions behind Hülkenberg. Although, in terms of time, quite a way off Hülkenberg. The main losses to Lando. Turn 2, turn 6. GP is the most cool, calm, collected person. Like, Max Verstappen just whines at him over the radio all the time. And all he does, he's just like, Max, I'm just telling you how it is. I'm just letting you know, Max. I'm just doing my job, mate. Lando Norris is closing in, though. It was 7.5 seconds, the gap. Lando Norris was 0.3 of a second quicker just in the first sector last lap. So, I'll tell you what. I might have been completely wrong. I said about 5 laps ago that I can't see many moves being made in the top 10. Charles Leclerc then tried to prove me wrong and push on. Now Lando Norris is pushing on and closing in on Max Verstappen. Lando Norris in work mode right now. Engineer comes on the radio, tries to tell him what's happening. He's like, I got it. Don't worry. Just let me focus. Needs that focus, does Lando Norris. Really, really solid. Lando Norris, late race win. Where have I heard that before? 4.5 seconds of the gap. Still a lot. It's still a lot of time, and it's 11 laps left to go. But he is closing down on Lando. On Max is Lando. Although it does make you wonder whether Max was just kind of holding back a touch. Also, a lot of cars to kind of get through. Lando Norris now making his way past Daniel Ricciardo, I think it is, and then Hülkenberg up the road as well. George Russell, box. Oh. Is that an issue? Or just the tyres absolutely shot to pieces? Because he's going to come out behind Hamilton. And like a long way behind Hamilton. So he's going to lose track position unless they're also going to pit Hamilton. I'm not sure why you would do that. I suppose you do that in case there's a safety car. And then you're on the fresh tyres compared to the top runners. But you need the safety car to happen like now. Like... 350 likes. Thank you guys so much. for all of the support on the streams recently. They've been doing absolutely amazingly. Cannot thank you all enough. Ooh, Max Verstappen just being told over the radio to be careful of track limits. Not something that I've actually kept an eye on. Let's have a little look at track limits. Yeah, Max Verstappen with 3 violations in terms of track limits so far. Ooh, interesting, interesting. So again, obviously, another couple of track limits infringements. There's a 5-second penalty for Max Verstappen, and Lando Norris within 5 seconds. So Verstappen needs to be a careful little driver for the rest of the Grand Prix. Perez, Leclerc, Tsunoda, and Hamilton also have 1 track limits infringement each, but 3 track limits infringements from Verstappen is very, very interesting indeed. Verstappen penalty, not yet, but he's getting towards one if he has another couple of track limits infringements. Lando Norris also now within 3.5 seconds. There is Alex Albon. Alex Albon, retire the car. That is the end of Alex Albon's run. He did 5 pit stops over the course of this Grand Prix. Goodness me. Verstappen within striking distance, 5 laps is what is predicted, but Max Verstappen actually on the fresher hard compound tyres. Lando Norris, though, just maybe has been able to hold on to these McLaren tyres a little bit better. He's completely left Charles Leclerc for dead, by the way, as well. Charles Leclerc, who's within touching distance, had DRS to Lando Norris at one point, remember, is now 4.5 seconds back. There's Alex Albon into the pits and out of the race. And yeah, Alex Albon's race completely ruined by a bodged pit stop, unfortunately. So all over for him. Lando Norris, though, 2.4 seconds, 2.3. Fastest lap, George Russell on a fresh set of medium tyres. Russell, though, 20 seconds off Lewis Hamilton. Seems like an odd time to stop for George Russell. Obviously gambling on there being a safety car literally then and there. Don't know what he was sort of looking at and seeing. Maybe the team just going for it. But Lando Norris is the one to keep an eye on here. Let's have a little look then. So it was a 120.9 from Verstappen, a 120.1 from Norris. 0.8 of a second. And Lando Norris will be able to now see Max Verstappen in front of him. And Lando and Yuki Tsunoda actually causing Max Verstappen a little bit of a headache there. Tsunoda trying to obviously battle and keep himself within the point scoring places, but Tsunoda in 10th now, a lap down on the leader. Caused Max Verstappen a little bit of a headache, and Lando Norris continues to close down on Verstappen. 8 laps left to go, and all of a sudden it's come back to life once again, this Grand Prix. It's been dead a couple of times, and now Lando Norris within 2 seconds of the lead. Leclerc down in 3rd place, Piastri 4th, Sainz in 5th place, Hamilton 6th now. 7th place is George Russell, Sergio Perez up into 8th place, although miles off being able to get any more positions, Sergio Perez. Lance Stroll in 9th, Yuki Tsunoda in 10th, Nico Hülkenberg just outside the points in 11th place. Everyone from Tsunoda backwards has been overtaken by the race leader, who is currently Max Verstappen. Much better from Max last time around, though. A 120.9 from Max Verstappen. Race control, Zhou Guanyu and Ocon. An incident between those two is now under investigation. Come on, Lando, please. Although the problem is Max Verstappen has now cleared all the back markers, which were causing him a little bit of a headache. And Lando Norris has also done so too. So these two are just out on track all by themselves. And unlikely that Verstappen will catch up to the back of Lance Stroll in the next few laps. So, Lando Norris then closing in. Norris's radio. Happy to push. Turn 9. Push a little bit harder is what Lando is being told. And Lando is pushing as hard as he can, he says over the radio. Thank you very much. So, puts down phone, does Lando Norris. 1.5 seconds the gap. They come back around again. A 120.5 for Verstappen. A 120.1 from Norris. And you can see Norris is really going for it. Snap of understeer from Lando Norris there as well. And Lando Norris is absolutely going for it. He's pushing maybe a little too hard. He's getting all out of shape, actually, towards the first few corners. Reclama, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button. Hit like as well. It massively helps out me and everybody else who is on the channel. We're nearly at 400 likes, says Phoenix. If we can hit over 400, that would be absolutely amazing. Especially as Lando Norris now continues to hunt down the rear end of the Red Bull in Max Verstappen. Verstappen has actually eked out a couple attempts on Lando Norris this lap. Makes you wonder if he's just overcooked those tyres a touch, Lando Norris. Been a little bit scruffy from the Brit. Wasn't the cleanest lap with 5 laps left to go. Lando Norris now 1.6 behind. You can see pretty much matched Max Verstappen on that last lap. In fact, Verstappen eking out 0.04 of a second to Lando Norris. The dream podium. I mean, yeah. Verstappen, Norris, Leclerc. Very worthy of their positioning, in my opinion, so far today. Max Verstappen and Lando Norris then going around the middle sector once again. And Lando Norris does feel like it was a little bit too much, maybe. He was 1.6 on the start-finish line. Now finds himself 1.8 seconds behind on the current lap. Just makes you wonder if Max Verstappen also had just a little bit in reserve. And Lando Norris getting to within those couple of seconds has just made Max Verstappen push that little bit harder too. And now we're getting towards the point where it's just turning a touch. Max Verstappen actually quicker than Lando Norris once again there. A 120.3 from Verstappen, a 120.4 from Norris. So loses a 1/10 of a second. Norris's tyres are a tiny little bit older as well. Lando Norris, 38 laps he's done on these hard compound tyres to 35 on Max Verstappen's. So we're looking at these two. Still an opportunity, though, for Lando Norris. Needs a really, really solid couple of laps to maybe have a go at it down towards turn 2 on the final lap of the Grand Prix. 4 laps left to go, of course. And we are on lap 60 of 63 here in Imola. Outside of that, we've got Leclerc in 3rd place, Piastri 4th, Carlos Sainz 5th, Hamilton 6th, Russell 7th, Sergio Perez in 8th place, Lance Stroll in 9th, and Yuki Tsunoda in the final point-scoring place in 10th. George Russell has actually done the fastest lap of the Grand Prix, so he'll get a bonus point in 7th place. Hulkenberg is just outside the points in 11th. We've got Ricciardo, Magnussen, Bottas, Ocon, Joe, Gasly, Alonso, and Sargent still running around at the back of the pack. In fact, a little battle between Ocon and Bottas just going on. And Ocon, I think, is going to make the move. Does. Ocon up into 14th. Bottas back down to 15th. So there is still movement towards the back of the pack, but no real chance of any of them getting anywhere near the points this afternoon. I think Piastri can get a podium. No. He is 6 seconds adrift, nearly 7 seconds adrift of Charles Leclerc. Just wasn't able to keep up with him. Stroll points, Norris wins. Stroll points, yes, Norris wins. Getting closer. It was a 120.6 from Verstappen, a 120.2 from Norris, but again, he's still not within that DRS range. Although he was 0.3 of a second, nearly 0.4 of a second faster than Max Verstappen last lap. DRS is going to be what he really needs to then get himself within striking distance for the final lap of the Grand Prix. So he needs to be within a second this lap. Then, battery is almost empty, says Max Verstappen. He's using as much of the battery as possible. So Norris needs DRS here for me, but isn't within it. 1.2 seconds, the gap, as they go down towards turn 2 on the penultimate lap of the Grand Prix. And yeah, just because he's not quite within that second, so isn't going to get the DRS. So it's going to be he's going to have the DRS on the last lap. I feel like he needed the DRS this lap to properly be within touching distance. And oh my goodness me, Lando Norris is absolutely going for it. Sliding around in that McLaren car. Zach Brown looks on and has to just hope that Lando Norris isn't going to throw away the opportunity here. He'd be more than happy if Lando Norris just finishes in second place, I think. But Lando, yeah, Lando a little bit too much. Think just lost the McLaren a touch there. And Verstappen 1.2 ahead. Lando Norris. The DRS detection, I don't think he's going to be within a second. Yeah, no DRS for Lando Norris. As we go through the final lap of the Grand Prix, still over a second behind Lando Norris. If this race was like 3 more laps, I think he'd absolutely have it. But Lando Norris just outside of a second behind Max Verstappen when the DRS detection point was there. Still just outside of that striking distance. Lando Norris is gaining. Is indeed gaining, but it's not within the touching point. Needs one more lap, did Lando Norris. Trying to maybe force Verstappen to make a mistake. Verstappen doesn't make many mistakes when it comes to race day for Lando Norris, unfortunately. Bumps over the curb, just Lando Norris trying to close that gap to Verstappen on the last lap of the Grand Prix. But it does unfortunately look like it's not going to be quite enough. They're going to come around the final couple of corners. Lando Norris going to be within touching distance of Verstappen. Within a second of the Red Bull. Just needed one more lap, did Lando Norris, but he'll take it. A second place finish for Lando Norris. Another win for Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc comes home in third place. 7 seconds off the back of Verstappen and Norris. So once again, Norris showing that he is the closest competitor to Max Verstappen right now and has been for a little while, in my opinion. Oscar Piastri comes home in fourth place. Again, just misses out on the podium there. Oscar Piastri, 6 seconds off the back of Leclerc. Carlos Sainz comes across the line in 5th place. Lewis Hamilton is then going to come home in 6th. Just comes across the line right now. Got a couple of the lapped cars making their way around too. Ocon and Joe just making their way over the start-finish line to confirm their positions. Russell comes home in 7th place. Sergio Perez is going to come home in 8th place. And actually, Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso going around together at this moment in time. Lance Stroll almost taking over his teammate. Fernando Alonso finishing in 19th place. Lance Stroll, though, a 9th place finish for the Aston Martin. And a very well-deserved couple of points for him. Yuki Tsunoda has already finished in 10th place. Whew. It heated up towards the end there, didn't it? Very, very tight between Verstappen and Norris. But Verstappen once again shows why he is the current world champion. Just enough to keep Lando Norris at bay, and a very, very solid drive from Max Verstappen once again. Verstappen with three track limits infringements, but not quite enough to get a penalty, no. So, unfortunately, Verstappen takes the victory for the McLaren boys. I was hoping for it, but it didn't quite happen. Lando Norris in second place, Charles Leclerc in third. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you could leave a like on the stream, that'd be absolutely amazing. We're heading towards 80,000 subscribers as well, so if you could subscribe, that would be awesome. And we will be back again live for the Monaco Grand Prix next weekend. Couple of videos coming out between now and then. Also, so hit the subscribe. And of course, a few shorts along the way as well. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you all the members to the channel who are absolutely backing us and moving us towards bigger and better things every single weekend. Thank you guys so much. Indeed, I will now be watching the Premier League.